World domination achieved. What's next? Is Israel winning the war between it and Palestine? What do you think? This man disagrees. His name is John Mearsheimer, an expert in political science, and is known for developing the theory of offensive realism, which describes the interaction between great powers as being primarily driven by the rational desire to achieve regional hegemony in an anarchic international system. He is simply an expert who sits down and studies world or international interactions and theorizes about them. In accordance with his theory, Mearsheimer believes that China's growing power will likely bring it into conflict with Israel's best friend, the land of the free. And right now he's gonna take us on a roller coaster ride on why he thinks Israel is losing this conflict. And ironic as that sounds, Hamas might actually have the upper hand in this.
Israel is the big loser. Israel is in really serious trouble today, and there's little hope of getting away from that moving forward. Second, that the Americans are also losers, although they do not lose as big as Israel does. And the winners, not in any decisive way, but the winners are the Iranians. Israel today is what I would call Greater Israel. Israel controls everything between the river and the sea. And of course, that phrase is usually associated with Hamas. And what Hamas wants is to control everything between the river and the sea, just like it does. And the end result is that what you have today is a Greater Israel. And that Greater Israel includes what's called Green Line Israel. That was Israel before the 1967 war, plus Gaza, plus the West Bank. Okay, so there are those three areas that comprise Greater Israel. And what's very important to understand is that inside Greater Israel, there are roughly 7.3 million Palestinians and roughly 7.3 million Israelis. There is rough equality between the two sides. So the question is, how does Israel think about dealing with Greater Israel, where you have rough equality between these two populations? And there are basically four options. One is you have a democratic Greater Israel. That's not going to happen because it would no longer be a Jewish state. Okay, because if you look at demographic patterns, the Palestinians are making more babies than the Israeli Jews. So that's not happening. Second possibility is a two-state solution. Everybody loves to talk about a two-state solution. That is not happening, certainly after what happened on October 7th, but even before then, and I'll talk more about this. Netanyahu and the elite has no interest in a two-state solution, okay? The third possibility is apartheid, and basically what you now have is an apartheid state. The fourth option is ethnic cleansing. And ethnic cleansing means getting the Palestinians, for the most part, who live in Gaza and who live in the West Bank, and creating a Greater Israel that is completely dominated by Israeli Jews, has very few, if any, Palestinians in its midst. So again, the four options are, number one, democratic Greater Israel. Number two, two-state solution. Those two are off the table. Number three, apartheid, which is basically what you have now. And number four is ethnic cleansing, where you get rid of the Palestinians. Before October 7th, the Palestinians in Gaza basically lived in a giant open-air prison. What happened was that in 2005, when Ariel Sharon was the prime minister of Israel, he decided to pull the settlers out of Gaza. As you know, there are settlers in the West Bank. Up until 2005, there were Israeli settlers in Gaza, and Sharon pulled them out. And he pulled them out because Gaza was a hornet's nest, and having settlers in there was a nightmare. And they had their hands full in the West Bank, and they wanted to focus on the West Bank. And what they did was pulled all the settlers out, and it became an open-air prison. Now, it looked up until October 7th like Net and company were able to manage the situation inside of Gaza. Nobody thought what happened on October 7th was going to happen. This is why the Israelis got caught with their pants down. They thought they were managing the situation very well. What happens on October 7th is that Hamas attacks into Israel, and I think it's fair to say achieves a spectacular success. I think the evidence is that Hamas was surprised by how successful they were. And anyway, they eventually leave Israel, and the Israelis consolidate the situation inside of their borders. And then they eventually go on the offensive against Hamas. And that offensive is now taking place. Okay, now what we want to ask ourselves is, what exactly are Israel's goals here? So there's sort of two principal goals here: defeat Hamas decisively and get back the hostage. What's not discussed in the Western media is the real goal. And the real goal is to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And the reason they want to ethnically cleanse Gaza is because, number one, that's the way you get out of apartheid. You all understand. It is an apartheid. And the only way you get out of that situation is you cleanse. Furthermore, it's the only way you defeat Hamas. I'll talk more about this. It's quite clear that the Israelis are not going to defeat Hamas, right? And I can't believe they thought they would defeat Hamas before they went in there. They're too smart for that. But if you cleanse Gaza and you drive all the Palestinians, you drive Hamas out. So you solve two of the principal problems you faced with ethnic cleansing. You solve the apartheid problem and you solve the Hamas problem. Now you're probably saying to yourself, Israel wouldn't do anything like this. Just a couple points. First of all, to create the state of Israel, to begin with, you had to do massive ethnic cleansing. In 1948 and in 1967, the Israelis cleansed huge portions of what is today Greater Israel. And the idea that they wouldn't do this, if you read all sorts of Israeli media, they talk about cleansing all the time. And it makes perfect sense if you think about it. They want to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And then that brings us to the question, how do you do this, right? How do you get the Palestinians out? Well, first of all, they definitely went after Hamas to start with. That was the purely military side of the story. They went after Hamas. But to make ethnic work, you have to, number one, significant numbers of people, of Palestinians, who are basically innocent Palestinians, not Hamas. You have large numbers of them, and you have to give them a powerful incentive by killing them to drive them out. Number two, you have to make the place unlivable. And that's what they're doing. I mean, they're not just people. They're making Gaza unlivable. And the reason it's unlivable is because they're trying to cleanse Gaza. It's very important to understand that. And then finally, what they're doing is starving the population. Why are they starving Palestinians? Why are they the Palestinians? Why are they making Gaza unlivable? It's very simple. They want to drive them out. So that's basically what's been happening. And in the beginning, right, there was all sorts of talk about genocide. And I was on the record publicly as saying this is not a genocide. But after December, I changed my mind on that. I think the Israelis are now engaged in genocide. So the question is, where are we today? Where are we today? First of all, they've not defeated Hamas, and they're not going to defeat Hamas. Kurt Campbell, who is the Deputy Secretary of State, basically said that yesterday. There are all sorts of stories in the press that they're not going to defeat Hamas. They haven't gotten hostages back, and they have not been able to cleanse Gaza. They've not been able to cleanse Gaza. Furthermore, they're stuck in Gaza. They're there, right? They got out in 2005, and they're back there. This is not good. So what you see here is in real trouble in Gaza. Now, in addition to the problem in Gaza, they have a huge problem with Hezbollah, because Hezbollah in the north, in support of Hamas, has been shelling northern Israel. And there are somewhere between 60,000 and 100,000 Israelis from the northern part of Israel who have had to move into the center of Israel on a temporary basis and can't go home because Hezbollah is shelling northern Israel. And Hezbollah has said that until this all ends in Gaza, they're going to continue to fight the Israelis. This is a huge problem for the Israelis. So they not only have trouble with Hamas and Gaza, they have trouble with Hezbollah up on the northern border. And by the way, the Houthis are actually now taking aim at the Israelis. And the Houthis just recently landed their first missile inside of just one, but that's a harbinger of things to come. So you see how much trouble Israel is in. They have not achieved their objectives. with regard to those two stated objectives and with regard to the ethnic. What these believe is that their deterrence depends on escalation dominance. Escalation dominance. That means if somebody whacks me and I whack them back, I whack them back harder than they initially whacked me. In other words, as we go up the escalation ladder, I dominate. Escalation dominance? It's now very clear the Israelis no longer have escalation dominance vis-a-vis Iran or vis-a-vis Hezbollah.
It's not really clear where this conflict is going to end, but a lot of Palestinians have faith that they have a upper hand in this. Like, a lot of them are suggesting that Israel people are actually fleeing some parts of Palestine, going back to the original places. Reports suggest that they are using their airline to go back to Europe and some to the United States and etc. And on top of that, after the Iranian president got unalived in that helicopter crash, a lot of Western countries were excited, as you would expect. But Iran wasn't so happy about this and the ongoing conflict involving Israel and Gaza. In fact, they sent them a warning, suggesting that if this conflict continues, Iran is likely to join, and any other nation that might rally behind Israel is also gonna suffer the implications. Who knows what military capabilities Iran has? They were very vulgar about this. In fact, you might find videos on TikTok. Now let's get back to the question, is Israel losing? John Mearsheimer started in 2023 talking about this, and Al Jazeera wrote about him saying, US political scientist John Mearsheimer on Israel's punishment campaign against the civilian population in Palestine. Israel has gone far beyond going after Hamas in the first 10 weeks of its war on Gaza, according to one of the United States' leading political scientists, John Mearsheimer. He tells host Stephen Clemens that unaliving hundreds of civilians daily and starving the rest is a punishment campaign and should be unacceptable to decent people all over the world. In this episode, Mearsheimer, who teaches international relations at the University of Chicago, looks into Israel's long-term strategies and explains why the elites in the US, Europe, and the Arab world are not taking concrete steps to stop Israel's unaliving campaign. So back in 2023, he was simply raising awareness, saying that people are not doing enough to try to stop Israel's campaign. He spoke about the US, he spoke about Europe, he even spoke about the Arab nations not coming up with solutions to amalgamate themselves and try to put Israel answerable for the crimes they committed. So they were pretty much aware all this while that Israel had ill intentions upon the Palestinians, but most people did nothing about it. And I think this is where Karim Khan started entering the scene. It's people like John Mearsheimer and Karim Khan that started bringing awareness to these things. Karim entered the scene in 2024, obviously, after he saw that Israel had gone too far, and maybe that's the reason why he was pointing out that it's unacceptable that Israel should continue in its rally campaign of unaliving millions of Palestinians. Right? They should be answerable for that, because it's something that these people were observing. They studied these things and they know that it's a strategic campaign that Israel was pulling. So Khan entered the scene because he knew that nobody was going to do it. And he took matters in the hands of the ICC because it's the rightful thing for them to do. But the other people in the ICC were not going to do it. The concept of ethnic has roots in various historical conflicts, but its modern form emerged during the 20th century, particularly during periods of political upheaval, nationalism, and ethnic tensions. One of the earliest instances of ethnic in modern history is often attributed to the Ottoman Empire during the Armenian genocide of 1915 to 1923, where approximately 1.5 million Armenians were unalived and many more were forcibly displaced. This event is considered one of the first systemic attempts to eliminate an ethnic group from a specific territory, and this paved the way for the cleansing that people are now practicing in the modern age. Why is it important to cleanse, you ask? Let me tell you. To those who practice cleansing is often driven by a combination of political, ideological, and social cultural factors. Some of the motivations behind ethnic cleansing include political gain. Cleansing may be used as a means to gain or maintain control over territory, resources, or power. It can be employed by governments or other groups to consolidate power and eliminate perceived to their authority. The other thing is ethnic or religious supremacy. Perpetrators of ethnic cleansing may believe in the superiority of their own ethnic or religious group and to seek elimination or marginalization of those they view as inferior or as obstacles to their dominance. The other thing is nationalism and identity. Ethnic cleansing can be driven by nationalist ideologies that prioritize the interests of one ethnic group over others, leading to efforts to create ethnically or culturally homogeneous territories. Fear and prejudice. Fear or prejudice against specific ethnic or religious groups can fuel cleansing, as perpetrators may perceive these groups as threats to their safety, cultural identity, or way of life. Overall, cleansing is important to those who practice it because they see it as a means to achieve their political, social, or ideological goals, often at the expense of the rights, safety, and lives of others. Israel is likely not to give up very soon, but what happened in 2005 shows you that there are possibilities of Israel not winning this conflict, because Israel lost control over the Gaza Strip. Maintaining control over Gaza and the Palestinian population was becoming increasingly costly and difficult for Israel, particularly in terms of security. The Gaza Strip had been a focal point of violence and conflict, with frequent clashes between Israel forces and Palestinian militaries. That was one of the challenges. And the other thing was international pressure. So Israel faced pressure from the international community, including the United States and European Union, to take steps towards a peaceful resolution with the Israel-Palestinian conflict. The Gaza disengagement was seen as a potential confidence-building measure and a step towards creating a viable Palestinian state. The fact that there's somebody who supports Israel in the United States government right now also tells you a lot about this conflict, right? That's the reason why Israel is not backing down, because they are seeing this as the opportune time for them to take charge of what is now known as Palestine. But as we are approaching the elections in the United States, who knows what's going to happen? Israel is likely to give up because if Uncle Sam gets out of office and if somebody else is going to get re-elected, they might just lose then. But you leave your thoughts in the comment section regarding what you think about today's discussion. I will see you in the next video. Signing off for now. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.